Hello, MotoAmerica fans. It's time for another episode of Off Track with Carruthers and Bice. You'll laugh, you'll cry, and you may even learn something from this unlikely pair and their special guest. The mic is yours, Paul and Sean.
Well, hello there. This is Paul Carruthers. I'm the communications manager for MotoAmerica, the home of the AMA Superbike Series, and much more. I'm joined today, as always, by Sean Bice on our podcast, which is weekly and called Off Track. We discuss everything from, MotoAmerica and sometimes a little bit more. Today, we're going it alone, Sean, just you and me. I didn't want to have anybody on here. I just wanted to have a conversation with you. No guest. I wanted to see what's going on in the life of Sean Bice.
Yeah, I mean, if I had a pillow and you had a pillow, we could call it pillow talk, but that might be a little too personal. I don't know. Good to talk to you again, Paul. I'm pretty excited. Every day that goes by is another day closer to the season, and seems like there's news coming out all the time for us, and it really seems to be pointing to what's going to be a great season for us for a lot of reasons, which we can talk about in this podcast. But it was nice to see that somewhat cryptic press release or story the other day that you did about Celtic HSBK Racing. Maybe you can talk about that, and we'll have a conversation about that too.
Yeah, it was, again, back to what you were saying a minute ago, but it's nice now we're finally getting some teams that are, not getting their act together, but, things come together a bit late, especially when you're trying something new, as a lot of these teams are. But yeah, we're starting to get some announcements, and it just builds some excitement. I mean, I'm ready to go, and I'm really anxious to see, where all the pieces fall into place. The Celtic HSBK thing, as you said, it kind of leaves you with more questions than answers, but I think that's kind of their plan there is, I talked to them, and it sounds like they're going to be doing I don't know if it's one a week or whatever, but they're going to have their announcements kind of spaced out a little bit, which I guess builds some excitement. I'd like to know exactly what's going on at the time, because it's kind of frustrating for me, but I kind of have some ideas, but I could easily be wrong. But yeah, we should know shortly exactly what their plans are. Obviously, that first release talked about the fact that they're going to be using Ducatis, which would lead you to believe that they're going to be in the Superbike class and or Stock 1000. I think their relationship with PJ Jacobsen would lead me to believe that he would be one of the two riders. And then you see Brandon Pash, sitting on a Ducati on social media, and we know he tested a 600 for him in the off season, so it kind of leads you to believe that he would be the second rider. But then again, you don't know anymore. I mean, some of these riders just like to mess with us, especially Josh Herrin. He takes any advantage he can to hop on into a conversation and insert himself and make people wonder still what he's up to. So yeah, it's all kind of fun.
It's funny with Josh Herrin, whenever we do a social media post that's related to Superbike, and certainly it was the case with this announcement with Celtic HSBK, he chimes in and says, "Hey, what do you guys think about me riding on a Ducati?" So he did it with our Mini Cup about Ovali, and he's kind of done it with this, and it's kind of funny. It's certainly given him a chance to, have a lot of social media presence, which he already has anyway, but build his fan base, which is a big one, we know. We almost need a scorecard a little bit at this point. And I've been thinking, it's somewhat musical chairs a little bit, but not necessarily. So I kind of want to talk about, for instance, last year's Yamaha factory team, which is this year's Attack Yamaha team. They had two riders before. They have two riders now. Yoshimura Suzuki had two riders before. Hammer Suzuki right now has one rider, with the expectation that they're going to probably have another rider. So those two things kind of count. That's sort of a wash. Hammer last year had a single Superbike rider in Jake Lewis. question is whether he's going to be the second guy or, what's going to happen with him. But so that's sort of an unknown at this point. So JD Beach was on an attack Yamaha last year. He's not in our series this year, unfortunately, but it sounds like we're going to have a Celtic HSBK rider in Superbike that we didn't have last year. Presumably, if it's the rider that they had last year racing in Supersport, then that's a new addition to our paddock and a new rider. So, and that doesn't count some of the teams like Scheibe Racing, who he has said that he's considering the possibility of a couple of riders. Certainly going to have one to replace Jake Gagne. So, I mean, this musical chairs idea, I don't know. There may be a rider left out. I still don't know. It's fairly early, but so far as I'm keeping track of it, everything seems to be pretty much well, I shouldn't say the same. Everything, there are huge changes in the paddock, but in terms of number of riders on the grid, it seems like it's going to be the same, if not more. Do you get that sense too, Paul?
Yeah, I think it's going to be more than last year. I think when things all settle down, you're going to see some of the stock 1000 guys making the move to Superbike or, racing in both. So I think at the end of the day, I mean, we're going to have to wait here and entries start to close at the end of the month. So I think we're really, at that point, people are going to have to make their commitments and kind of tell us what's going on. But I think it'll definitely, we will have more people on the grid in Superbike this year than we did last year. So it's a good thing. I think, there's a lot of things that throw people for a loop and the Yamaha announcement with Attack and then Suzuki's announcement with Team Hammer. It just kind of, people tend to not hit the panic button, but kind of hit the panic button. It's like, oh, Yosh is out, Suzuki's out, Yamaha's out. It's like, when the dust clears and you see actually what's there, it's not a lot different than what it was. Yeah, Yoshimura is out, but Team Hammer's taken over. So I always think of things. I try to think of things positively, and I'm thinking, how fortunate we are that just Suzuki didn't decide, okay, we're not going to race. So, there's other ways to look at that too. It's like, Yoshimura was a powerhouse team, no doubt about it. I mean, basically, Moto's GP World Superbike level crew. Organization from top to bottom, a full racing company. And I'm not saying that Team Hammer is not the same, because I think they will do a wonderful job with it. But if you're somebody that's competing against them, for example, in Superbike, you might think, okay, maybe things will be a little more even, or, maybe, I've got a better shot. And I think, and I think that goes a long way with these teams opting to do things the way that they are. I think it does give some other smaller teams a little more hope as far as, moving closer to the front. So I see that as a good thing.
Yeah, a couple things with that. I was going to say the renewed hope that I have is kind of brought about by, we talked to some of the teams along the way, and just talking, for instance, I'll mention Steve Scheibe. I don't think this is saying anything out of school at all with him, having conversations with him about his team in general. He's kind of felt like maybe the playing field's a little more level now. He feels like, he's spent a few years in the paddock now developing that BMW. And if he continues with that iteration of the bike, it's very developed right now. It's known to be very fast. He feels like maybe it brings the teams back to the rest of them a little bit. That maybe have played a factor in Celtic HSBK getting involved, but it seems like there's a renewed spirit and a hope within the paddock among some of the other riders that they feel like they can catch up, they can get closer or even surpass the teams. I know Westby's the same way. They feel like now it's kind of now or never this year. And another thing I wanted to say with Westby, we yesterday we ran that Throwback Thursday photo of Ben Bostrom leading Matt Mladen into turn 3 at Loudon. And I happened to notice and remembered, and I know you recall this too, Paul. So Ben was wearing a Yoshimura patch on his leathers, and he was riding a Honda RC45. And it's kind of like with Westby Racing. Westby Racing races a Yamaha, but they use a Yoshimura pipe. So Ben on a Honda with a Yoshimura pipe was leading the Yoshimura Suzuki rider of Matt Mladen at the time. And it got me to thinking about, now that Supercross season has started, Yoshimura has that Honda effort that they do in Supercross. So it makes me sort of wonder, if not this year, maybe down the road, you wonder, they've got the infrastructure and the relationship with Honda. You kind of wonder if they might become Yoshimura Honda. And they were that at one time, way back in the beginning, when they had Yoshimura, they had Kawasaki for a while. You wonder if they may return to the paddock again, if not this year, then maybe down the road, because they're still in the business of selling exhaust systems, and they certainly have a rich history of racing. So, there's still a place for Yoshimura to be involved in our paddock. Would you agree?
Oh yeah, 100%. I mean, that's one of the first things I thought of is, with Yoshimura and not returning to the Suzuki fold. It's like, okay, here's this shop. There's guys there, or used to be there, or guys that could be there again, that 100% know exactly what they're doing and how to go about the business of racing superbikes. So if you're somebody like Honda, for example, and you don't necessarily want to bring that in-house, but you'd still like to go racing with your new superbike, I don't know, if I was calling the shots at Honda, I'd be like, okay, let's just call these guys and have them do it from top to bottom, because we know it's going to be done well and they'll showcase our product well. So I could totally see that happening in 2021. That might be wishful thinking on my part, because I'd love to see obviously both of those people back in our paddock, those people being Honda and Yoshimura. I think together it would be awesome. So, my fingers are crossed that something like that could happen. And, there's always plenty of good riders around, and you could see some riders, moving teams and this and that. I remember back in the day, I mean, Honda was just known for, more so in motocross than anything, it's like, oh, this is the young hot guy or whatever, and they would just basically go steal that guy. So it'd be kind of cool to have some of that changing seats and things like that going on. And obviously it would be beneficial to the series and everybody involved to have somebody like Honda back in as well as Yoshimura. So I think it'd be a match made in heaven, but that's just me.
Yeah, another one that is interesting too is, and I called him about this a few weeks ago, Freddie Carswell, who runs Superbike Unlimited out of North Carolina. He's an aftermarket company, and they build engines, and they've had some involvement in some teams. Corey Heflin raced an R1 last year, and I think he's racing an R1 again this year in Stock 1000 that's built by Superbike Unlimited. And Freddie had kind of teased out the fact that he was building a Kawasaki Superbike. So, I mean, I got in touch with him and thought, well, who's your rider? And he wasn't ready to divulge that yet, but he was sort of, I don't know whether he was kind of, polling the room, so to speak. But it sounds like he's pretty interested, or at least wants to try to be involved in Superbike and on a Kawasaki. And then, we have the contingency press release that came out where, Kawasaki's still providing quite a bit of support for the riders in our entire series, all 5 of our classes, but certainly in Superbike. And they've always been strong in that. So, maybe again, this is the year that, maybe there's going to be some Kawasaki involvement in Superbike with some of the other teams. Remains to be seen, but it just feels like, some of the other some of the other teams are saying, hey, maybe I could get involved in this now, because, it's not quote factory, even though for the most part, there's still very much factory involvement in Superbike. So I just can't wait to see. So that you mentioned something earlier that I didn't actually know. You're saying, so the entries have to be done by the end of, is it the end of January that the entries have to be all in?
Yeah, January 31st. At least,
Okay.
for the premier teams, like the season entries. Yeah, it's the Kawasaki thing is interesting. They obviously put a lot of money on the table, and especially in the Superbike class. Now it's easy to say, okay, they're putting that money up because no one's going to collect it, because at this point in time, I think David Anthony is the only Kawasaki rider. But that's not necessarily what it could end up being. I mean, if you wanted to start a superbike team today, and you didn't have any alliance with a particular manufacturer, I think it would be a fairly easy move to get yourself some Kawasaki's and chase that contingency money, which is very high. I mean, it's $15,000 of contingency money to win a superbike race on a Kawasaki. So you can't tell me that there's not teams out there that could grab onto that bike and do what they needed to do to be competitive. It's not like it's a motorcycle that's not capable of winning. I mean, it's the World Superbike champion motorcycle. So
Exactly.
I think there's huge opportunity for somebody to start taking some of that money. I don't know what holds people up as far as making those decisions. Obviously, it's not cheap to just go superbike racing, but I definitely don't think it's as expensive as most people make it out to be. So, I'd go ride a Kawasaki in a heartbeat if I could take a chance at winning some of that money.
Yeah, and I mean, you think about you mentioned Aussie David Anthony, when we had him on the podcast recently, and he was sort of intimating a little bit that he's still interested in being on the bike, but he's starting to near the end of that point, and he's looking possibly to put somebody else on the bike. So he almost was kind of sending out an invitation, if not for this year, then maybe to talk to somebody down the road about, to fill his shoes and have him just be a team owner. But, he's had a great presence with Kawasaki and really, really kind of showed that brand really well over the past few years. And, I'm going to throw it out there. I'm going to say it, Paul. We talked to a guy last year at the beginning of the season because we didn't know what he was going to do, and that was Chuck Graves. And we were going to have him on the podcast and talk to him about his situation because he was a huge presence in the paddock. He was even when he was a rider, but when he formed Graves Motorsports and then got involved with Yamaha, that thing developed from a Formula Extreme team and a Supersport team into finally a Supersport team. So he had done it before. And we thought, well, okay, when the relationship ended with Yamaha, he kind of started to show bits and pieces of the fact that he was becoming aligned with Kawasaki, at least their machinery, their equipment, their motorcycles, if not the factory themselves. And I'm sure he has a relationship with them now. So I just keep wondering. I mean, I know he's involved in AFM, and he helped Braden Norton in the beginning of the season last year, and certainly helped Andrew Lee with his effort. I kept thinking, when's he going to get back involved in this? Because Chuck has always been a national, an AMA level rider, and I know he loved the winning that he did, and he did a lot of it. So that motorcycle is a winning motorcycle. So, this is a little bit of a shout out to Chuck Graves. If not this year, then next year. But I assume at some point he's going to get back involved in our series. Don't you think that would be the case?
Yeah, I would hope so. But again, I don't understand why, if that's going to happen, why it's not already happening. Because I think the timing would be exceptional right now for him to jump back in. But obviously, yeah. I mean, he knows more about his business than we do, and he plays his cards pretty close to his chest. I'm sure if we had him on the podcast, we might not even learn much from what his plans are, because he's just a guy that doesn't necessarily talk about things until he's actually doing them. So I don't know. I mean, maybe I don't know what his business model is, what his business plan is. And it may not include racing at any higher level than the club level. Maybe he races at the club level. He figures that's where he sells his product. And I don't know. I mean, I would think a company like his would benefit greatly from having a superbike team or a super sport team, and winning at the MotoAmerica level to further enhance his sales. But again, who am I to say? I don't know what his plans are. I'd love to have him.
It's funny. It's funny. Last year when we talked to him, and he said, I'm not ready to talk about it yet, but he said he wants it to be very positive towards American road racing and certainly MotoAmerica. So he said he kind of left it with let me get back to you on stuff. And I thought it was going to be kind of a little bit later in the year. And admittedly, I didn't get in touch with him, but let him have his distance, so to speak. But I kind of wonder, it's kind of an open invitation. Chuck, if you're listening, if any of your people are listening, or if anybody that talks to Chuck is listening, anytime he wants to come on the podcast and talk about what he's doing now or later, and planning to do, would be perfectly fine. We'd like to talk to him. But he does play things close to the vest, so it's sometimes a little hard to do a podcast with somebody like that who doesn't divulge a lot of information. And I respected the fact that he couldn't really tell us much, so it would have made it kind of a hollow podcast before. But hopefully we'll have him on at some point, and it'll be good news to talk about MotoAmerica. Paul, if you will, I want to switch gears a little bit. One of the things that's pretty awesome about our series, and is something that we didn't have when we were younger, and even Wayne Rainey didn't have when he was younger, is the fact that we have 5 classes that help develop a rider from a pretty young age, 14 years old, up through with Junior Cup. And we're seeing it happen now with some of these riders. Alex Dumas is a great example. Benjamin Smith, they've started out in Junior Cup and moved up. And I don't know for sure, but I think there's a possibility Alex Dumas might move up to a big bike this year, whether it's stock 1000 or whatever. But he's a big enough kid to do that. Brandon Posh is another one that we may see on a bigger bike. He's gotten a lot bigger. But I want to talk about the Mini Cup that we've come out with. Have you talk about it a little bit, how that works and how it kind of was born at Pittsburgh last year, and we had a good time with those kids. But the reason I bring it up is it's a segment of riders it's obviously below Junior Cup for the most part, and it's an entree into our series. It's another entree into our series, I guess. And I really like the fact that it kind of competes with these other countries that the kids seem to get on scooters from such a young age. Well, if we can get our young people on these Ovalis and learn some road racing, it's going to help us. But can you talk about that a little bit, how it's going to work and how it was born out of Pittsburgh?
Well, I think everybody enjoyed having those guys, those kids and their families at Pittsburgh. I think everybody was impressed with the show they put on. That little Ovali motorcycle is really cool. Like, it's funny because we actually got one that's all done up in MotoAmerica colors and everything, and it's sitting right here in the shop, and we haven't gotten the chance to go ride it yet. But it's one of the things I've got planned. Is I actually talked to Josh Herrin, and I think I'll go out with him and we can do some video and stuff with him, like trying to tell me how to not look stupid on the thing. So the cup the cup itself, I think, is really cool. I mean, one of the things that I've really enjoyed about MotoAmerica is watching these young riders progress from their first time showing up at the races, their first time on the podium, their first wins, and to have, I mean, how cool would it be, like in Stock 1000 this year, if we have a Brandon Pash, who was a Junior Cup champion back when it was the RC Cup, and Alex Dumas, and racing Stock 1000. I mean, those are kids that we've basically known since they started. Well, this the Mini Cup's going to give us even more of that. I mean, we're going to be able to see kids progress from 8, 9, 10 years old all the way through to Junior Cup, and then through the ranks. So I think I'm excited about it. I would like to think that we could get things to the point where, if you're an aspiring, I want to be world champion, and you're 10, 11, 12 years old, I would like you to have an opportunity to hone those skills and get better in this country rather than go to Spain or Italy or somewhere else in Europe to go race little motorcycles. So I think having that here in our series now, I mean, a kid and their family can come to the MotoAmerica events that we're holding the Mini Cup races at, and they can have an opportunity to race within a paddock that that's full of these kids as heroes. And not only that, but it gives them an opportunity to show their stuff in front of the right people, so to speak. It's like our guys when we'd go to Laguna Seca and race with World Superbike, or when we go to Dakota and race with MotoGP. I mean, it gives those guys a real opportunity to show who they are the people that matter as far as going and racing internationally. So I just think it's a great opportunity for the kids, and I think it's really cool for us. And I'm really looking forward to seeing how that pans out, because I think it'll not only start well with this year, but I think it'll really build into something, and we can gain some more momentum with that. And it's, we need somewhere for these kids to race when they're not old enough to go to Junior Cup, and for certain we want them racing with us.
Yeah, definitely. So it's through this year. For this year, it's 3 races, and I'm sure there's going to be situations where there might be riders that only compete at 1 event or 2 events. But the idea is, if a rider goes and competes at all 3 events, is there a championship that's going to be awarded for the points leader of the 3 races?
I don't know that that's totally been sorted out yet, but there's going to be something, and I've heard that I've heard all kinds of things, like the winner will get a chance to go to Europe to race, et cetera, et cetera. There's been talk that the winner would get an opportunity to try out for a Junior Cup team. So I think that's all still in the works, but I definitely think they're going to come up with ways of making it. Of enticing these young guys to really go for it in that series, because it'll help them, make the next step.
Yeah. Would that they had that when we were kids, though, man. I mean, I think about, when I first started riding around, it was on one of those lawnmower powered mini bikes, and the thing was cool to ride around the yard, but those little Ovalis are unbelievable. They've got everything going for them. And I had to laugh the other day. You were talking about, Brandon Posh and Alex Dumas, but another one that rode in Stock 1000 and did quite well last year is Ashton Yates, who started out in Junior Cup. And I saw a photo of him the other day sitting on one of those Ovalis, and he may be just a little too big for that bike, but it was fun to at least see that he could try to sit on it. So,
yeah,
but there wasn't.
They're small, but they're small and he's really tall, so that might not be a combination that works. But yeah, I mean, these kids today are so lucky with how much, think if Wayne would have had those kind of things to ride when he was just a little kid. I mean, obviously he wouldn't change anything because his career turned out rather well, but and I do think racing on the dirt and riding on the dirt is a big advantage at that age, but it sure would be nice to have had the chance to do both. I mean, I remember going, with my buddies, we'd had like these, I don't know if you remember the Yamahopper, but it was like a pseudo moped. And we would have those, and some of my buddies had these like Pook mopeds, and we'd go to San Diego Stadium in the parking lot, and we'd actually race those things. Basically no safety apparel either, by the way, but you would hit a foot peg and the rear wheel would lift off the ground and you'd have a big crash. I mean, they just were absolutely not made for that, but that's kind of all we had, so we went with it. But yeah, I mean, I could just imagine being 12, 13 years old or whatever and jumping on one of those Ovalis at a go-kart track. You'd need a plastic surgeon to remove the smile from your face, but oh well.
Yeah, I remember those Yamahoppers. That's kind of funny. It was called a QT50. It was a 50cc 2-stroke engine, but to your point, they may have had folding foot pegs on them, but they had a weird setup where your feet were down below, and I could see where you'd dig them in and lever that rear wheel off the ground. I wouldn't think that would be quite the bike to ride. Of course, when we were a little bit older, but still fairly young, and I still have one, that YSR 50 was, a pretty cool little bike, but compared to the Ovali, which, is very high spec, I know a lot of guys started out on YSR 50s on kart tracks and stuff. There were still riders, around here. I know Gavin Anthony, who raced in our series a couple of years ago or last year, raced at this small track around here called Circleville on a YSR 50. And I know they use some of the smaller bikes too, but I would think that those kart tracks are now being populated by Ovalis, and I've seen some video of Josh riding Josh Herrin. So, man, you and he have got to go out. That would be pretty cool. You got to, and shoot some video of that for us to put up on our social media, that would be fantastic.
Yeah, it'd be a lot of fun. We're definitely going to do that, but I don't think those foot pegs on that Yamaha are folded up, Sean.
I think you're right. I think that's what I'm saying. That was a pretty dangerous little scooter to ride around on.
And of course, my dad ported mine, so it was a little quicker. But it was funny because to make it run the way that he had it set up was basically you had to run the choke the whole time. But it was, mine was a little faster than theirs, but it didn't stop me from crashing my brains out all the time. But back to the original talk here, the Mini Cup's going to be cool. Motools come on as a sponsor, so that's really cool to have a nice little series like that with already having a series sponsor. And I think you're going to see more people jump on board with sponsorship in that class because why not? You're get these kids using your product at a young age, and sometimes it works out in your favor and they use your product forever. So it makes sense.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see if we'll probably be able to do a little bit of media training with some of these young riders too. I mean, I don't know if we're going to have our press conferences with them or not, but we, like last year we had the luncheon with them and they got to meet Wayne and we talked to some of them and it was a chance for them to kind of be in the public a little bit, which will be a first time for some of them. So I think, it'll help them not only with their writing skills, but their ability to, to speak on camera or speak in front of a mic or on a podium. So, all of it's good for cultivating talent for the future for us. So really looking forward to that a lot.
Yeah. I mean, you can see, you've been doing it. You've been with MotoAmerica for most of the time, or at least been at the races for the entire time that we've been doing this. But you could see some of those kids, the way that they progressed, not only on the racetrack, but also like in the press conference. And the one that comes to mind to me the most is Ashton Yates. I mean, the first time he was in there, I felt so bad for the kid. I was trying to help him, and you could tell he was just deer in the headlights. And watching him get better each and every race because he was on the podium a lot in that class, and now he's just he's got it figured out. He does a good job with the social media, and he's just matured into a nice young lad that kind of knows what he's doing. So it's nice to see those results. I mean, Brandon Pash, for example. I mean, I remember when he showed up for the first time as a 14-year-old, he was already a pretty polished little speaker, and he had a sense of humor that he's maintained through where he is today. But they're not all like that. Obviously, some of them struggle a little more than others, but it's nice to see them all have success and get better at that kind of stuff.
Yeah, it's pretty great.
So we've got we just did an announcement that the Ridge, our new event in Washington on I guess it's semi outskirts of Seattle, or at least drivable from Seattle. They've got tickets on sale starting today. So that was our last one to button up. And now on our website, we've got tickets available for all of our races. And we're also, I've got to remind people that the MotoAmerica Live Plus is going to be back for a second year. That was extremely popular. It's one of my favorite parts of MotoAmerica is the addition of the MotoAmerica Live Plus. My friends that use it and everything, I get nothing but rave reviews about how well it works. And I know it works well because I use it myself, even at the races that I'm at all of them anyway, but I have that thing turned on at my desk in the media center, or you can walk around and kind of know what's going on just right on your phone. So we've got preseason sale on that. So now's a good time to start buying this stuff as we gear up towards the season. And obviously you buy early and you get the best pricing. So yeah, we're getting ready to go here. I mean, it's all coming up rather quickly, but like we talked about a little earlier, these teams will start to really make their announcements, and we'll find out who that second rider is on the Team Hammer Suzuki. What's your feelings on that, Sean? Where do you think that's going to end up?
Just because Jake Lewis was with the team, I don't know what his contractual situation is, but I know he was paid through Yamaha or through Suzuki. It's been pretty quiet with him. I don't know what's going to happen with him, but I just think with Bobby Fong, I mean, Bobby won that championship. He even said, I think at the end of the year, either when he was about to get the championship or after, I think he said he would have been perfectly fine with racing another year in Super Sport. But I'd heard that maybe, he was keeping his aspirations a little lower than they should have been, maybe. But I don't know. It feels like maybe what he did on that GSXR 600 might have given him enough to move up. But it's tough because, Jake was his teammate last year. So I don't know. I mean, Team Hammer is going to be interesting. It sounded like they're going to have a rider in riders in 4 of our 5 classes. So, we'll have to see where everything lands. But, my money possibly is on Bobby. Although, I'd like to see Jake too. It's tough. What do you think?
I don't know. I still have this outside feeling that, that Josh Herrin still has an opportunity to do that. I don't know I don't know enough to know whether they're in negotiations or if that ship has sailed. But the fact that he hasn't announced that he's doing something else leads me to believe that there still might be an opportunity for that. Obviously, if the Herrin thing doesn't work out, then I think Bobby Fong's probably the most natural choice for those guys. I think Bobby would do a good job, and obviously he's already in the team. I don't know, and they've also got a Sean Dillon Kelly who's in Super Sport and could challenge for that championship in his second year. So it's not like they would, if they didn't have Bobby in Super Sport, it's not like they lose their chances of winning that championship. They'd have a great chance to do so with Sean Dillon Kelly. I don't know how much to put into Josh's, what do you think about me riding a Ducati? Oh, what do you think about? I just think I don't know. I think he just throws a lot of stuff out there to see what sticks. All I know is I just hope that kid is in our series because he's, his following is such that, I'm worried that, obviously if he doesn't get a ride, how things are, it'll, our fans will say it's MotoAmerica's fault and, they'll come and burn down our building or something. So I'd like to prevent that. But somebody's got to have that kid on a bike. He's not only a good rider, but he's obviously a good promoter and he can sell whatever product that team wants him to sell. So he should be in our series, and I'm confident that he will be. And if he's not, I'm going to go ahead and take whatever we pay you and give him, and I'll give him a little bit of what I make and a little bit of what Wayne makes, and then maybe we can just get him set up in our own team. Just to prevent us from getting hung on social media.
I honestly can't imagine that he's not going to be in this series in some way. And you're right. That's that second Suzuki ride, possibly. I don't know. But if not them, I think there probably are several teams that are probably looking at him to see what, if they can get him on the team. Because, he's obviously a front runner and, he's good for our series in a lot of ways. It's amazing, though, Paul. You think about I can't remember what year it was. If it was, you can correct me, or you'd probably know. I think it might have been the first year of MotoAmerica when he raced in Moto2, and that kind of went south. And he showed up at New Jersey our last round, and pretty humbled by the whole thing. But it was smart for him to be there and kind of walk around the paddock. And the next year, he was back in MotoAmerica, and he built himself up from 600s back up to through super stock and got back to superbike again. And it's amazing, in a pretty short amount of time, and in the lifetime of MotoAmerica thus far, he really reinvented himself. And he was popular before, but he's way more popular than he was then. And I don't think it's because of what he went through. I think it's because of the skills that he has and the way he communicates with his fans, which he's kind of always done. But it's a pretty remarkable turnaround for a guy like that, and he he certainly deserves to be on a superbike again. We won last year, and he'll be a winner for whoever he rides for.
Yeah, he's just got the social media thing figured out. I think I think the fans relate to him. He can be a little bit of a hooligan at times, and they like that. You can see him on social media reaching out to want to play video games with his fans. And I mean, it's just, there's not many people that put in the effort and make those things happen like he does. And there's not many people that are, comfortable wanting to do it. So he's just kind of got it together, and he's obviously likes it, and he feels comfortable with it, and he interacts with everybody really well, and he likes to stir the pot. And I hate to say he gives no Fs, but there's times when it seems like he just gives no Fs and it works for him. He's 100% got the social media thing figured out. And I think it's only going to help him when he, in situations like this where he's out looking for a ride, because obviously anybody who gets Josh is getting him not only for the fact that he's capable of winning superbike races, but for the other stuff that he brings to the table, and social media ranks right at the top of that. So I can't picture a MotoAmerica championship without him in it at this point. So I'm pretty confident that we're going to have that.
Yeah. Hey, I know we're getting towards the end of the podcast here, but I want to throw something out real quick again. I have another question for you. So we had announced that at Indy this year, we're going to have a flat track event with Steve Nace Productions, and which is a great organization. And I got to, I don't know exactly how it's going to work, so I wanted to ask you: is the racing going to be at night? And that's question number one. Number two, can any of our riders in the grid or in the series in any of our classes compete in that? Like you mentioned, giving no Fs and hooligans, and it made me think of the hooligans that are going to be racing in that hooligans class at that event. So can there be any crossover with our guys?
I don't see that there would be any problems with that at all. Obviously it would, it would take somebody like Josh Herrin to want to do the hooligans race. He's done one before. He did the one out here at Huntington Beach. I would think those kind of opportunities for Josh would be more prevalent if he wasn't on a factory team, because obviously they might have a little tighter rein on him than what he would have if he had his own team or with somebody else's privateer level team. So, but yeah, there's no restrictions on that. I mean, they could do what they want. The races themselves are going to be like late evening. It's not going to run into the darkness. Let's put it that way. But it's summer, so that it stays light later. But it'll be. It sounds to me like it's going to be like roughly when our show starts to wind down. At 4:30 in the afternoon is when they'd pick things up over there. So I think it's a great opportunity for fans of MotoAmerica that haven't seen dirt track, and also for dirt track fans that are in the Indy area that want to come and watch a dirt track, and also maybe get the opportunity to see MotoAmerica for the first time. So I think it's a perfect fit. I know I'm looking forward to it. That Bultaco class they have is really cool. That's the photo we used in the release. But it's going to be fun. And Indy, that's just the start of it. With Indy, we're gonna have a lot of different events and things going on at that race, and we're really excited to be going back there, obviously, because it's an amazing facility. And the people are great to work with at the Speedway. They know what they're doing, obviously, because they have big events every single year. So we're actually proud to be part of their events for the 2020 season. So it's going to be cool. And Laguna Seca is the same way. I mean, there's no World Superbike there. It's just going to be MotoAmerica, and we're going to make a big motorcycle festival out of it with all kinds of stuff that we've got working in the plans now, and we'll be able to announce those things pretty soon. But there's going to be a lot of things for people to see at those two events. So it's going to be cool.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to it for sure. It's going to be great.
But we can wrap this up for today, and thanks for joining me. I know over the next couple of weeks we've got some pretty cool guests lined up, including one who's actually both of them have won world championships. And both very popular guys, both in our paddock and worldwide. So we've got that coming up over the next couple of weeks. I won't tell you who it is, but we'll let you know as soon as we get it scheduled. But yeah, it'll be cool to have some different guests on, and we can talk more MotoAmerica stuff and also throw in some other things of what these two individuals are up to. So it'll be very cool. In the meantime, have a good rest of your week, and we'll talk again next week, Sean.
All right, you too, Paul. Thanks. Good to be on with you for this one. Take care.